Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Lena. I lead community at Linear, which means I do events like this, as well as educational resources to help you get the most out of Linear, also like this. And I'm joined by my colleagues Ivy and Mafiz today. Ivy, do you want to say hi?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Ivy. I'm on the customer experience side of things. So I'm really excited to teach a little bit more about GitHub. Happy to be here. And thanks for joining, everybody.
Now, just an FYI before I hand it over to Ivy, we know every team is different. Everyone builds and works in their own ways. We only have so much time today to share about the GitHub integration with you all. So we'll give as detailed of an overview as we can. But if you have more specific needs or account specific questions that you can't necessarily ask in a public forum like this, please reach out to our team, support@linear.app, or consult our docs. Related to that point, GitHub is just one of our Git integrations. We also have a GitLab integration. They're pretty similar, so a lot of what Ivy is covering today should answer those questions. Ivy, I'll hand it over to you to start our overview and how to.
Lovely. Okay. Like I said, I'm Ivy. I'm from the CX side of things. So we are very excited to dive into how Linear integrates with GitHub. We're going to learn about streamlining some engineering workflows, but this also covers more broadly how best to connect your teams across your workspace. And I wanted to note that this is one of our earliest integrations. So it's honestly a testament to how much care was put into this as we've developed and expanded it. And excited for Muthis to be in the chat on the engineering side, who's built and contributed to so much of this integration as well. Today, we're going to cover evergreen features, some you may be familiar with, also newer alpha features, which will be quite fun to see. And we'll kind of cover best practices and pro tips throughout our office hours today. And like this office hours, it's kind of like a whiteboarding session. So we're going to live directly in the tools that we are using and demoing today. So you can just see I updated my setup. On the left side, we are in Linear. On the right side, I am connected to GitHub. So all the work that I'm doing on the right side will be in GitHub. On the left, we will be in Linear. Okay, so before we really dig into things, I wanted to quickly touch on like the power of this integration. It really lies in automating redundant, burdensome manual work. It keeps Linear as a source of truth for all teams, so that does save builders time within your engineering orgs, but also it maintains real-time status of your Linear issues, so everyone in your workspace across teams can really rely on that. We're going to take a really simple workflow and visualize the benefit of this integration before we double click into any specific features of this GitHub integration. So let's do just a quick kind of overview. So first, we can really easily connect work that's happening from developers in GitHub back to work being tracked in Linear. And this is just through a simple reference to this example Linear issue I have pulled up here. I can easily grab this Linear Issues ID directly from the UI. I could also use the command period shortcut here. And I can paste it directly in my GitHub pull request, just like that. This is directly in the title. Once I click Save here, this automatically references that work in both platforms, and it's going to update the Linear issues. So let's click Save so we can kind of see this. Wonderful. You can see that Linear has been listening. We have our comment here that references our Linear issue. And you can also see that we moved from a previous to-do status into an in-progress status. So this was a really quick step that shows work has started on the engineering side with no added effort and no manual communication. Once I'm ready for a developer to actually review this pull request in GitHub, I can go ahead and request their approval directly in the PR. I'm just going to request myself here. So once I do this, you can see a really nice change was just made in Linear from in progress now to in review. Let's say that work is ready for an approval. We feel really good about it. And now I get to go in and see that this Linear issue is in review, and I'm assigned as the reviewer. Since I have our alpha reviews featured enabled within my workspace, I can also open this review directly in Linear. You can see it referenced here. which is wonderful. We can rely on automated syncing here. So also, I get all of this information about the pull request, but I can interact with that pull request. Let's say, looks good to me. I'm going to post this to GitHub directly in Linear, and you can see that comment gets synced really nicely in the PR. And this happens vice versa as well. So you can see how this really keeps Linear centered as our source of truth and does reduce context switching really nicely. Okay, so outside of that alpha reviews view that we just had, I'm back in the Linear issue. And once this work has been approved and now merged, once I approve it, we'll see some really nice automation here as well. I'm going to go ahead and merge that pull request. And you're going to see this in review status move to a finalized done status back in Linear. So everyone subscribed to this issue is actually clued in on the finished implementation on the GitHub side automatically. And this reduces context switching, as I said, but it keeps teams updated through this automation. So it ensures everyone in your workspace can rely on the status of these linear issues without overhead. Okay, so we just visualized a really basic setup here. We had workflow through PR linking in our title of that PR referencing this ID. We've also gone through status automation. So we saw this move from to do, in progress, and review to done. And I'm going to expand on what's actually possible with this integration from here. So let's move out of this linear issue. And like I said, this is kind of whiteboarding. So let's get into our linear document. And I'm going to start here with how to actually connect GitHub. Okay, so as you can see on the left side of this table in my linear document is our organization level connection. To make sure everything works really smoothly across your repositories, it's helpful to connect GitHub at the organization level through a GitHub org owner. From there, each member in your Linear workspace can authenticate with their own personal GitHub accounts. On the right side of this Linear table, exclusively connecting your personal GitHub accounts might be best for individuals working in like solo repositories, maybe leaner setups who need less automation. And this piece only requires a GitHub repository admin. Okay, so in my Linear workspace, you can see I'm connecting to my Orbiting Labs workspace. And you can kind of also see visually, I'm connected to my GitHub Orbiting Labs organization. So this is a really intuitive mapping between my Linear workspace and my GitHub organization through my chosen naming here, but it's really a good way to think about the conceptual mapping between both platforms. So when I look at my Linear teams now as part of this Linear workspace, core services maps really nicely to my Orbit core repository in this Orbiting Labs organization. And you can see also my infrastructure team maps really nicely to Orbit Infra repo in this organization. Mapping your repositories to Linear teams kind of one-to-one in this way organizes distinct work happening across different teams in your organization and enables personalized workflows. So developing like the core product in core services, for example, may need unique automation compared to maintaining stable infrastructure on the infrastructure team. Okay. I am going to go ahead and open the settings for this integration. Give me a moment to queue this up. And you can see it's already enabled within my workspace level settings. You can see my Orbiting Labs GitHub organization is referenced here, similar naming to my Linear workspace. If I click to configure this, you can also see that I've granted all of my repositories in this organization access. So that's Orbit Core and Orbit Infra. I could also just select those two repositories, or maybe I only wanted Orbit Infra, but for now I'm selecting all of them. And you can also see that I am connected to Linear Ivy, my personal GitHub account here. If I click into settings, you can also see this connected on my GitHub account on the Linear side. I'm going to head back into our document so you have a visual here. But it's really important to note that without members in your workspace also connecting their personal accounts like I did here with Linear Ivy, synced activity in Linear from our GitHub integration is actually linked to GitHub as a reference and not that individual account. So not to Ivy or not to move fees, as you can see in this screenshot. Connecting that personal account is what actually maps the activity from GitHub directly back to that member in your workspace. So this is helpful with syncing, comment threads, maybe viewing recent activity and issues. You know who that action is coming from. Okay, so we've seen connection of our GitHub organization. We've connected our personal accounts here. We've granted access to our two repositories in this org, Orbit Core, Orbit Infra, and we've gotten a really nice kind of visual of an initial development workflow with our issues. I'm going to focus on Orbit Core as part of this demo. So I'm going to click into this repository now. And again, reminder that this is mapped to our core services team within my Linear workspace. Let's really dig into how we get to connect this development work happening in Orbit Core repository back to work being tracked in Linear. And there are two umbrella methods to link work between these two platforms. The first happens within the GitHub pull request PR, and the second happens directly within a commit message. So when code is changed or pushed without a formal PR, you can see these two methods here. I'm going to talk about PR linking first, and we did get just an initial peek at this in our earlier demo when you saw me paste the issue ID into that PR title. So PR linking is recommended for teams using feature branches, code review processes, structured workflows, because this approach really enables robust automation and it captures a bit more nuance here. And with PR linking, we have 3 distinct ways to link your PR in GitHub back to your Linear issue. The first is in your PR title. We saw this. You can drop the Linear issue identifier anywhere in the PR title to connect engineering work back to Linear issues being tracked or tracking that work. So I'm going to go ahead and open a pull request here so you can kind of see this. Again, I'm clicking this copy issue ID button or command period. You can see it's copied to my clipboard. I'm going to go ahead and paste this in the PR title. I'll click save. And you can see this is now actively linked. Linear is listening for this change. And we saw that this issue status was moved to an in progress status. Wonderful. And here's the review. So that's one of our methods. The second is the PR description, which is similar, but not the exact same as the title here. And I'll kind of talk about that. You have to include magic words when we're referencing issue IDs within the description of a pull request. So if I click into this pull request here, I can edit just like I did earlier and add an issue ID directly in the title. But in this second method, I'm going to go ahead and edit the pull request description. And again, I will copy the relevant issue IDs to my clipboard here, but this will not work. If I save this, our pull request is not going to get linked to this issue. And this is because we are missing our magic word. So in the PR description, we have to have a magic word like resolves. This could also be fixes or closes. But this triggers linking and the full automation of that Linear issue. So if I update this comment with the resolves core 11, that issue ID, you'll see again, wonderful. We've linked this work to that Linear issue, and we've started our status automation from to do to in progress. You have to have that magic word here. Also note that this is a closing magic word. So we also have non-closing magic words. Non-closing magic words will not move the issue into a fully finalized done state, but you'll still capture the status automation prior to that completed state. Since I used resolves, that's a closing magic word, and I will get all the way through to a done or completed state. You can always reference our GitHub documentation for like a full list of supported magic words because we have quite a few. And this is a similar concept in GitHub as well. Okay, The next PR linking method, this third approach here, is using our generated branch name. You can quickly copy the generated branch name in a linear issue to draft your code in GitHub again and connect your work and update the issue status, but this time it's all in one step. I'm going to go to this linear issue, and here you can see I'm not copying the issue ID, but rather the Git branch name. And this is Command Shift period for the shortcut. You can see I've copied this configurable branch name to my clipboard, which references that issue ID. And instead of doing this on an existing PR, I'm going to go ahead and just make a quick update to the README. Let's just make a quick change here. I'll commit those changes. And I get this modal in the UI, but note that you can also do this throughout your terminal as well, or in your code editor. And you can see I'm going to create a new branch for this commit and start a pull request. Here is where I would paste that generated Git branch name. Woohoo! Okay, so once I click propose to actually propose these changes, that linked linear issue is going to move to an in progress issue status as we saw. But I'm going to wait to do this because while I'm here, I also want to touch on our separate commit linking method here to connect work in GitHub happening to work you're tracking in linear. This is kind of the final method to linking your development work. It's similar to our PR description, which also uses magic words. So again, from this issue, I can copy the ID for the commit, and I would want to say resolves for a closing magic word, or maybe refs or references for a non-closing magic word. And I would paste that issue ID again for the commit message. Again, you could also do this in terminal. So this is similar. You have to have the magic words just as you do in the PR description, but this is a separate linking method. This does need the commit linking. It does need configured through webhooks in your integration settings. And it works really well for situations where maybe collaborative code reviews are not required, or you need less tracking and less automation. So let's kind of summarize what we've looked for. I'm going to just kind of discard these changes. We got a visual of all of these steps. And let's expand just so you have a nice visual here. But we have a few approaches to link this development in GitHub in our Orbit core repository to issues that we're tracking for that work in linear. And this is through the PR title with a reference to that issue ID. It's in the PR description using magic words. It's drafting your code on that generated Git branch that we copied. And separately, you could also do that through commit messages using magic words again. So this unlocks status automation. We've seen that to-do status move to an in-progress status in the linear issue. And so it really keeps linear as a central source of truth without any manual overhead. Okay, this is quite a few methods to talk through. So I'm going to pause here and check in with Lena to see if we have any questions that we should answer live before we move on.
Yeah, Rachel had one question about how many repos can we connect and will they be separated?
So I kind of touched on that conceptual mapping where my Orbit core repo was one-to-one matched to, I'll just visualize it here, that core services team. And again, like Orbit infra to infrastructure. Let's say you work in microservices and you have quite a few repos. I showed you some configuration where you could select the specific repos you'd like to connect to keep things really organized and intentional about which repos you're connecting. You could map them to teams similarly. You could also say work in a mono repo where you only have one large repo for all of your code. You can connect to that repo to multiple teams, that same repo to multiple teams. You could connect it to one team. So you do have some configuration options there. That's a great question. What else?
We got another question from Felipe about commit linking. I just want to call this out because Skyline, who is in the audience today, answered this one. Felipe asks, commit linking will also update the linear issue to done when the PR is merged. And the answer from Skyline is if you're using a closing magic word, it will be marked as done. If you opt for a non-closing magic word, it will not. And then we linked to a resource on that. Ivy, can you go a little deeper into personal connections? There are a couple follow-up questions about that. So, what does
Yeah.
connecting your personal GitHub account add?
So this screenshot that I have in this document, I think is a really helpful way to see why this is an a helpful configuration to connect this personal GitHub account. If not, let's say I did not connect to Linear Ivy and I've only connected my Orbiting Labs organization and Orbit Core repo, you would see all of this activity from GitHub as just this GitHub entity, not from a specific person. But because I have Linear Ivy connected, and you can see in this after screenshot, showing Mufiz as the actor for making these changes, not from GitHub, we actually get to see like who specifically made those changes, even though this action is coming from the GitHub integration. And you can connect this in your integration settings, as I showed earlier. This isn't necessary, but it's really helpful to pinpoint where that activity is coming from. We just covered so many of our linking methods, and thanks for your great questions. We're going to move on to covering the kind of full comprehensive scope of some of the workflow automations that we get with this GitHub integration. I'm going to talk through first a real world workflow that I get to benefit from day to day as a customer experience member. As part of this table that you see below, you're going to see references to Intercom. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a platform that we use on the CX team for intake and resolution of customer reports. Just wanted to note that in case that was an unfamiliar platform for you. But let's talk about this lifecycle first before we actually show it. Let's say one of our customer reports to our CX team is something going wrong with this customer's linear workspace. And let's say in this example, I can test it and it is a bug. I'm going to turn that report into a linear issue with the customer request attached. And this happens automatically. And I can do it all without leaving Intercom. We have a nice linear integration in Intercom. And so from there, this issue that got filed to linear, it moves through our triage queue as a bug report and then is scrubbed by our engineering team for prioritization. And it's routed to the assigned developer for a fix. That developer is going to open a PR to actually fix the problematic code and is going to quickly link that PR that they're working on in GitHub back to the linear issue I filed through Intercom to connect the work and unlock our GitHub automation that we've been discovering. And once that PR is reviewed, it's approved, it's merged, so the fix for this bug is now live in our code base. That connected linear issue, the status of that issue moves to done. We've seen this status automation a bit. And after this moves to done, the action reports back to me over an intercom on the CX side automatically and in real time. You can see screenshots of how that looks. So this way I know when I have the green light to communicate what's a pretty speedy fix back to our customer, but without so much dependence on engineering to communicate anything or update things manually. This is the status automation I'm mentioning. That's one of the biggest time savers as part of this GitHub integration. And it's not only for your builders, but now you can see it's across organizations, just like CX in this example. So we've contextualized this automated lifecycle of a bug report across platforms like GitHub, Intercom, which is all powered through linear automation. But let's actually kind of visualize this further. So I'm going to click into our core services settings for issue statuses and automation. You might be familiar with this configuration for linear issues. This defines the workflow that issues move through from creation through completion. And importantly, you can also customize these statuses. So this might look familiar. Let's say, for example, when a developer has approved a PR in core services, I want a new reviewed status that happens after in review to signal that this work has been approved and it's ready to merge, but it's not yet been merged. It's not yet done. This is relevant because in Orbit Core, in my repository, I have rules set to prevent merging without an approved review, just to keep the code base safe. So I'm going to go ahead and create that reviewed status, this custom status. Okay, so let's say in another example, some teams rely on QA work streams to actually verify code changes before considering the work finished. We also have some really cool configurations that let us customize this even further. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and create a QA status here as well. So this kind of means that things have been approved. Maybe they are ready to be tested by a team to validate that things look good end to end. So we've customized our linear issue statuses here. I'm scrolling down because we also get some really nice pull request automation when enabling this GitHub integration. And I want to walk you through how this works. When you open a PR or push a branch that links to an issue, that generated Git branch we saw earlier, this moves the issue to in progress. We've seen this. When you open a PR and request a reviewer, the status updates to in review. Here, when you merge the PR, the issue is marked done. But you saw me customize my issue statuses above, reviewed, QA, those didn't exist before. So I actually want to add our reviewed status on PR ready for merge. This is relevant because those rules that I have set in my Orbit core repository to protect your branches from merging, so like approvals required, maybe CI passing, things like that, I now have a clear state for when my PR is ready. It's past those requirements. So I get a lot more automation potential here with customization. Okay, back to that QA status we just customized. Let's say in this example, your engineers are deploying work to a separate staging environment. And this is coming from maybe a unique branch called staging, where your QA engineers validate those changes before that work lands in your production environment to your customers. I can also represent when the code has landed into the staging environment by triggering that QA status after those changes have landed in that staging branch and nowhere else. So in this case, developers are able to work downstream and QA aren't actually notified until developers have merged changes into this more focused, isolated staging branch upstream. So now things become actionable for QA to test. So to do this, we're going to show you. I'm going to go ahead and create a staging branch that comes off of my main branch in my GitHub organization or in my Orbit core repository. And then I'm going to go ahead and also create a branch specific rule. So the testing happens in this staging environment. I created that staging branch in GitHub. I also need to configure this as a rule. So when a staging branch is valid, when I'm working on a staging branch and changes get merged into that staging branch, I want to move my PR merge into a QA status. Okay. So this means when changes get merged into that staging branch, they're ready for the staging environment. My QA get notified with a very customized QA status. We've configured everything here for our Orbiting Labs workspace and our core services team here to really maximize their automation in this like end-to-end example. I want to move into actually visualizing this workflow now. So let's get out of here. And I'm going to go ahead and open our demo linear issue. You can see in this example linear issue, I have this kind of simulated bug report. This is connected to our Leo's World customer request here. And this you can assume was filed by someone on the CX team and again, triaged through engineering. So it's now picked up by our orbiting dev developer. And it's in that to-do status. Now we can actually simulate fixing this bug in GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the Git branch name just like we did earlier. I'm going to create a new PR. I'm just going to do this through the UI. So let's create a PR to actually fix this bug. I'm going to paste in that generated Git branch name, and I'm going to propose these changes. So my pull request isn't just yet open. We won't see status automation until I create this pull request. Let me give this a nicer title and a body in my pull request. I'm opening this now. So I feel like my bug fix here is valid. I'm going to go ahead and open this from like a draft state into a created PR. And already you see Linear was listening for that. My issue moved to this in progress state. And we can assume development now is beginning. Since I'm the author on this PR, but also even if you're a reviewer tagged on that PR for a review, which we'll see in a second, you actually can pull up this pull request. We saw this earlier directly in Linear. So this is our PR reviews alpha feature. We're syncing the reviews from GitHub directly into Linear to streamline this code review process. You can see here, I get information about where this branch is merging. So we know that this branch that we copied earlier is going into the staging environment for testing first. You can see who the author is. I'm the author. You can see the files changed. So I and the reviewer eventually knows the scope and impact. And this is all within Linear. And I'm done writing my code now. I feel good about it. I'm going to go ahead and add Mufiz as my reviewer on this PR. Now you see that the reviewer Mufiz was added. And you can also see I get some really nice status automation for that in review status. So now I know Mufiz is the one who is now taking action on this PR, and I'm on standby. I see Mufiz working in this PR, and I'm going to go ahead and open this in my reviews view. And you can see that activity is actually getting synced from GitHub back into this PR within Linear. This really helps maintain context as a central place in Linear. I can also see that the approval goes directly to my inbox. You can see that Mufiz approved this PR. So because I was on standby, I was waiting for Mufiz. I can wait for Linear to tell me when it's actionable for me again as the PR author. I can also say thanks and post this comment back to GitHub just to acknowledge that I really appreciate him looking at this review. And you can see I can sync from that Linear review back to the PR in GitHub. Okay. I'm back in this Linear issue, and we have this in reviewed status earlier now moved to that custom reviewed status. So we just configured this, remember, as part of our pull request automation in this core services team settings. Once I merged this change, because I configured those branch specific rules for our staging branch, remember that earlier, I can actually properly test these changes before going live. So we won't consider this issue as done, but we'll see our custom QA status applied here. So let me merge this pull request. So now you can see that status is in QA after this was merged from my generated branch to staging. Okay. I want to simulate that final step to move this issue into a done state. So now I need to move my staging branch to my main branch. Let's assume QA tested this, everything looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and create this PR really quickly once again. And this is from staging to our main production branch. So our Leo's World customer can actually get this bug fix. It's important here. You're not seeing any status automation happening. And that's because I have to connect this PR one more time to this pull request because it's a completely new pull request. This time, I'm just going to do it in the issue title. Now that is saved, We get our full status automation from our staging branch to our main branch. So you can see it's back in an in progress status on the linear side. So just make note on every PR, you'll need to make sure you're doing linking. I'm not going to go through the full issue status as we just did, but again, you could assume once this is reviewed, it will go to a reviewed state, once this is ready for QA, etc. But I'm just going to move this to main, bypassing our rules, just for the sake of time. And you'll see really nicely, I get that done status automation. So we've gone through the full life cycle here. This is merged in to our main branch. We see that done status applied to this bug report. And as you saw in this earlier example, on the CX side, we would get an automated notification that issue is complete. So I can tell Leo's World that we quickly fixed this bug report for them and things are resolved. So all of this just runs in the background. And as long as you've got your linear issue linked through your branch, your PR, teams across your organization are going to experience less context switching, more advanced automation, which reduces manual communication, outdated information. And it really ensures everyone in your workspace can rely on the status of your linear issues without extra manual overhead. Awesome. Wonderful. So this final piece is just one last area to touch on. And this is specifically for teams who are managing issues in both GitHub and Linear. We're not on pull requests anymore. So GitHub issues and Linear issues. So GitHub Sync helps eliminate duplicate tracking and keep statuses and comments and assignees in sync at the GitHub issue level and at the Linear issue level. I want to talk through a few best practices to mention when relying on syncing between GitHub issues and linear issues so you can plan for work here. First, it's best to only sync what you really need. Mapping your linear teams to the most relevant GitHub repositories helps reduce clutter across your organization. And when you need syncing this way, you have a direct mapping to context between both. It's also helpful to enable triage in Linear, our triage feature for a team in Linear. And this way, GitHub issues that are newly filed can be intentionally reviewed and accepted before adding them to your Linear team. And this helps maintain quality, relevancy, priority of your Linear issues. So you can scrub through each one. It's also helpful to make sure you're leveraging the direction of your syncing thoughtfully. So changes from GitHub reflected in Linear as your source of truth is best for clear ownership versus maybe syncing between Linear and GitHub bidirectionally. You maintain your source of truth in Linear instead. And then if you do need to import historical GitHub issues that are already created, we have this dedicated import tool that enables this for ongoing updates. You can find more about that in our documentation. So let's quickly visualize our GitHub issue syncing. I'm going to go ahead and move into our GitHub settings once again. You can see I have a section here for GitHub issues. Automatically create issues and sync properties from GitHub repos into linear teams. And I've set this up for infrastructure teams already, but we're focusing on our core services team. When I launch this, you can see I'm getting a prompt to link a GitHub repo to a linear team. As I've been talking about team to repo mapping, this is a really important concept for GitHub Sync, specifically issue sync. So I'm choosing Orbit Core as my repository, and I'm choosing core services as my linear team. I kind of mentioned about maybe staying really intentional about when you choose bidirectional syncing to keep things really organized. So I'm only syncing issues from my Orbit Core repository into my linear core services team. So that core services in linear is my source of truth. And I'll go ahead and save that configuration. So now this is enabled for GitHub issues synced to my linear issues on the core services side. I am going to go ahead and create a new issue here. I'll add a title. I'll add a body. And let's go ahead and create this issue. And we can add some more detail in a bit. But right away, before I even have navigated to my core services team to show this, you can see Linear is listening to this GitHub issue after I enabled that sync. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the app and move into my core services team, where you see I have a new triage item from that GitHub issue that was just synced into my core services team. And you can see detail about this. So we know that the issue is being synced because of this nice banner. I could leave a comment. I could also, let's say I do want to accept this issue. I'm going to go ahead and view the issue details here. And I want to assign a label to this. Let's say in this case, it might be a feature we're tracking. You can also see we get a really nice syncing with labeling here. So this is just a really nice way in case you are tracking GitHub issues for organizing your project management. You can still maintain your central source of truth in Linear. Okay, that was one small piece I wanted to touch on before we move into additional Q&A. And I will pause there, and that is the kind of breadth of our demo that we'll see with our GitHub integration. I'm going to go ahead and open some frequently asked questions that we have seen, or maybe points of maybe confusion. And I have these all in our backlog. We talked about most of these throughout the demo today. So I'm going to go through them one by one, and we actually have answered them within the Linear issue. So the title is the question or the area of confusion, and the answer is going to be a comment in the issue. So let me first just say, like, how can a PR be linked to a Linear issue? And if you know this already, feel free to just chat as I go through these and give your answers. But we did talk about a few ways that a PR can be linked to a Linear issue. I'm going to click into this, and you can see, again, to reiterate, we have one of three ways. You can use the branch name, that auto-generated branch name. You can do this in the PR title by referencing that Linear issue ID, or you can do this in the PR description, but importantly, this uses magic words, closing and non-closing magic words. So that's how a PR can be linked to a Linear issue, just to reiterate. Okay. When does the ready to merge automation trigger for issue status automation? Okay, so this triggers when GitHub branch protection rules are satisfied. They need to be enabled and they need to be satisfied. And this includes like passing checks or required approvals. So you saw in my pull requests, I had to have an approver before I could merge that PR. Once I had an approval, my checks were passed, and then I could actually merge that PR. We also saw this with that reviewed custom state that was ready to merge. Okay. Next is my Linear issue and my PR suddenly stopped syncing. This is kind of a tricky one, but if you ever see this happening, this can mean that webhooks are getting dropped. Maybe this is a GitHub outage. Maybe we're experiencing an incident on the Linear side. And sometimes maybe your PRs stop syncing, as we've been seeing with our automation. If you ever see this happening, you can try sending a test webhook or resync your PR to your Linear issue. You could always reach out to support as well. But in those cases, this might be indicative of an incident happening on either side. Okay, I'm getting an error when I try to link multiple GitHub orgs. We do have a required one-to-one mapping between GitHub organizations and Linear workspaces. So if you do see an error when you're trying to connect your GitHub organization, either reach out to us at support or make sure that GitHub organization is not connected to any other Linear workspace. That's typically the problem here. Okay, moving on. Why are status updates failing on specific branches? So just as you kind of saw, I had branch-specific rules set for staging in our demo. Make sure those automation settings are configured properly. but also make sure that you are linking those PRs between branches. So remember, I had to go back and link that PR again when I merged staging PR to main. So it's really important to check those things here. Okay. Magic words aren't working to link my PR to an issue. Make sure you're using the right supported magic words. We have comprehensive lists of our closing and non-closing magic words. So make sure that the magic word that you're choosing is referenced as part of our supported magic words. And also as part of this, if you are choosing a non-closing magic word, you will not expect to see your issue status move to done. That won't happen expectedly. So if this is kind of where maybe you're expecting done, but you're using like references or contributes to, you won't see it move to a done state. Okay. Moving on. Why aren't future updates triggering when I squash merge a PR? Again, you just want to make sure that those PRs are re-linked to your linear issue. They don't retain the issue link, so this is an important step. Okay, and then I think we have one more, which is why isn't my PR automatically updating issue statuses? Magic words, make sure you're using magic words if you are connecting that issue into your PR description. Make sure your issue IDs are properly referenced. And also, Mufis had a good point, which is make sure your repository is connected within your GitHub integration settings properly. That can be a tricky one to overlook. Okay, I think we've gone through all of our lightning round frequent questions that we see, but I just wanted to touch on those in case you've experienced any of that. Might be helpful.
Thank you, Ivy, so much for this incredible detailed overview. Really appreciate everyone being here. And big thanks to Mathies, who was everywhere today but on camera and had all the technical answers for us. All right, bye everyone. Take care.
Bye, everybody.